all coaching, all psychotherapy is about dealing with self sabotage, and that it is purposely not labeled in that manner because of the phenomenon we were just talking about, where people struggle with processing the different levels of awareness. And you have to arrive at the right time.
If today's conversation resonates with you and you're curious how human design shapes many of the themes that you are about to witness in this human being, you're invited to explore a companion episode on a sister channel called Design Within You, where Jen Pinkstone breaks down Jehan's chart, connecting it directly to moments from this conversation. The link can be found in the description below.
So let's go back to the lens. I'm kind of getting a feel for your work. I've worked with you before. I have, I've seen a bit of what you do, and I've had it explained to me, but it sounds as though consciousness can be equated to self-awareness. Awareness of the self kind of gives way for awareness of the other, and awareness of the self and the other as one is kind of a roundabout way of describing what consciousness actually is. And so cleaning that lens, kind of removing the conditioning, the conditioning and the trauma. Like, I liked how you described trauma, and I've jested that simply to be alive is traumatic. We all experience this, and we're none of us are free of conditioning and how it shapes us from the time that we get here to the time that we leave this body. But that awareness is kind of that first stepping stone to achieving a higher consciousness. And do you ever encounter people that they don't really have a desire to be aware, and it's like you said, they're kind of running from something, like the those that we were talking about before?
Yeah, the way that the subconscious works, the way that the nervous system, that whole connection works, is that it just wants to keep you in what's comfortable, even if the comfortable situation is causing a lot of pain, and it doesn't know that it's doing that. So it's not your fault. Like, again, we all struggle with this mechanism. And I do encounter some people that don't actually want to change once they become aware of it. And it's usually because there's something that is so scary to them about their environment, that giving up that bad habit or that belief that causes pain and problems and loss is actually worth keeping to them for one reason or another. I'll
Mm.
give you an example. I do a lot of healings on people. So if anybody actually wants to get healing through a regression, we can work on that. But you have to realize that it can be like a magic wand. It can help you to remove something that you've been struggling with, an injury, for example. And I'll tell a story when I finish this thought. But there's a process of aftercare where you have to make sure that any negative thoughts and emotions that you have repetitively had, that we work on those, and that you're open and available and understand that your choices to keep doing those things, keep thinking those things, will cause those injuries to return. It will cause those energies to return. Because if you're putting together a puzzle, putting pieces in a logical order to where they fit, to reach a whole picture. That's what life is. And life isn't going to unfold without your participation in it, even though you may be unaware of things that create circumstances. So you have to be willing to participate in your own rescue, in your own change process. And quite frankly, you're always participating anyway. But most recently, I had a client that he called me a narcissist because everything he said, I just told him some things in life are not as cut and dry and not as simple as that. Things can't be reduced to good or bad, this or that. In order to arrive at a destination of full awareness of a situation, there's always going to be perspectives, where you're looking at something from, and perception, how you're looking at it with the information that you have. And he kept pressing and saying certain things, and I would ignore them for the most part and continue on, but he would bring it back up because he wanted to be right about something that he saw on the internet that he heard and he liked, even though it wasn't true. And I said that there's a lot of content on the internet that doesn't allow for you to become fully aware, and in many instances to understand that two things can be true at the same time. For
Mm.
example, the rain could be falling, but you're not getting wet. Doesn't mean that the rain isn't wet. Doesn't mean that water isn't wet. And there's a lot of scenarios in life within the emotional landscape, within autopilot, what the subconscious mind does, that in order for you to survive, some things are flexible, some information is flexible. Everything isn't always rigid. And what he didn't want to do is he didn't want to forgive his ex girlfriend for leaving him. And the thing about it is that awareness is a big spotlight. So when you start to gain awareness and you realize that the reason why you ended up in a situation, in his instance, he hurt his back. He was a paramedic. He hurt his back lifting the gurney into the vehicle.
Mm.
And he thought he was at that level of awareness where that was a random occurrence in life. It had nothing to do with his spiritual life. It had nothing to do with his choices to show up at work that day, to be on this path. And I know that I'm largely speaking to an audience of people that are already at that level, and they understand that things aren't random and that everything that happens in the physical realm will happen in the spiritual realm as well, right? So he was very resistant to the idea that all of that had happened. He discovered that there was far more traumatic influences in his life than just the girlfriend leaving that laid the foundation for everything else. But for him, because he created an identity around several things that protected him from ever having to change, he didn't realize that the girlfriend left him because he wasn't being a nice person. He didn't realize that there was a level of consent, not saying that she was perfect, because she did do some things from his description. And I emphasize from his description, but he also consented to allowing those things as well. So boundaries weren't set. And if you're the kind of person where no one can tell you that you're wrong and you can't co-regulate within your relationships, and one person always has to be wrong and the other has to be right, and you don't understand that things happen to resolve and come back to a middle ground, you're not going to have a successful relationship. So this person was very alone, doesn't have good friendships, doesn't have any romantic relationships. His interactions with his parents and siblings are very strange. And without self responsibility, you're never going to rewire those neuron pathways that become ingrained in you from repetitive actions. And if you don't want to forgive, you're never going to give up the pain that caused the injury in his case.
Mm.
So there has to be the healing part, and then there has to be the part where you foster and you help that person understand and reach more levels of awareness and to understand certain things. And it takes time. And you have to be willing to deal with it in a manner that you would if you were eating dinner. You would not pick up the whole plate and just open your mouth and try to shove it all in there. You take bites, and you only take another bite when you're finished chewing, right? So that's really what the process is about. And I think that a lot of people, because they know that what happened isn't their fault, then they try to apply that to everything.
Hmm.
So because it wasn't my fault, I don't have to get right with this new concept that I could have done this small thing that put me on that path. And so I do meet people who aren't ready, and that's all that it is. They are not ready.
Hmm.
Where they are, they still have to go through that a little bit more to understand. But I usually terminate my agreement with that person once they become hostile because there's absolutely no reason for you to be hostile. If you don't
Yeah.
understand a concept and you're not ready to hear it, all you actually have to do is say, I disagree. Here's why I disagree. And I don't think that I'm ready to hear that.
Hmm.
Be honest enough to tell me why whatever it is triggers you. Because in this particular instance, I wasn't telling him anything about himself. I was telling him that the information is missing additional context.
Hmm.
And that in order to understand everything in a full way, you have to understand more about it. You have to look at the bigger picture of things, right?
Yes, the bigger picture. And that's what it conjures for me. You keep talking about these neuron pathways that need to be rewired. What kind of it brings to mind for me is circuitry. There is a circuitry that we are following on a in a neural um, dimension, and that circuitry, I believe strongly that everything is scalar in this universe. And it's many different philosophies and modalities speak of this this scalar representation of reality, these neurological pathways that you're describing. These circuitries are actually kind of transposed into our lives that we are moving throughout, like as we move literally our body through this life, there is a circuitry that we are following that is pattern like and repetitive. And whenever you're inside the bubble, so to speak, it becomes very difficult for you to see these patterns. And it becomes very easy to start saying, well, I didn't do that. It's not my fault. I didn't create that. When in fact, there is kind of, there is a remedy that can be taken, is what you're telling me, that this circuitry can be rewired in a different way that will mirror that in on a neural level as it does in your actual human life.
This would be a great time to tell you why I decided to specialize in self sabotage.
Do it. Let's do it.
Because when I started this many years ago, I became acutely aware that all coaching, all psychotherapy is about dealing with self sabotage, and that it is purposely not labeled in that manner because of the phenomenon we were just talking about, where people struggle with processing the different levels of awareness. And you have to arrive at the right time for you. It's like catching a flight. You know that you leave JFK to reach Barbados in 4.5 hours approximately. But that doesn't account for what's happening in the sky, that may slow down or speed up. And sometimes you get there early, you pull up on the tarmac, and you have to wait because other planes are taxiing because they arrived before you. So you can't get mad because of the way that situation worked out, right? And so we tend to arrive at our own conclusions about how things should look, when in reality, all helping people is about is helping to understand that whatever is they're automatically doing is protective and it's not purposely destructive.
Mm.
So, because on a subconscious level, everyone's mind chooses familiar emotional patterns over uncertain change, you have this phenomenon that they feel safer with the stuff that causes stress because at least I know that. At least I know what that is. Have you ever tried to take your regular route to the store or to work and then there's construction and you have to go a different way? And you know that you don't like to go this different way because it's harder and longer to get there. This is why you always go that way,
Sure.
right? That's exactly what it is. And this is why started to get into hypnotherapy so many years ago because I became aware and I had to change my beliefs about the way things should be done because I understood that hypnotherapy helps you to update your internal safety responses so that when you try to change things on a conscious level, the resistance that you would ordinarily feel that we talked about at the beginning of this interview, it no longer triggers such huge resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that happens pretty much every time somebody reaches out is that they've tried multiple approaches without lasting change. Whether that is, and I'm not attacking any modalities, but whether it's Reiki, psychology, you know, I've even had people say human design didn't work for me. And I said, okay, well, maybe that wasn't all that you needed. Maybe you need different levels of awareness. And I encourage people work with your doctor, work with your psychiatrist, work with your energy healer person, whoever, because it may take more than one thing to come together. But what hypnotherapy allows you to do is to focus on this particular subconscious level where these automatic patterns come from, create a change on that plane that feels more natural. Because lately I've just been saying outright, the subconscious level is the spiritual level. It is the spiritual plane. It's where the information is stored. If you check the research, Rupert Sheldrake's theory of the morphogenetic field, all these things, the subconscious appears to be the spiritual realm, which is like a storehouse of things. It's not different from the Akashic records. It's not different or separate from any other ideas that are out there in the spiritual realm. And I try to be very honest about that because you can create change there that has more of a lasting effect and it doesn't require any whatsoever. It doesn't require you to necessarily have to go through things that you don't want to go through. And so it becomes very gentle. And all you need for that is actually willingness plus openness to to follow the sound of my voice. And honestly, I like it because when it comes to emotional clarity and dealing with things in a safe way that would ordinarily stop you from moving forward, you can achieve that very quickly. It's very consistent. And when you realize that you need to change something and you have resistance and you get into that mode where you're like, I don't know why I'm like this and all that stuff, you're not in self trust and you're not in faith in a higher power. You're in a self defeating mode where you're not noticing the trigger itself. And that's the trick. So that's why I like doing those things. And that's why I like dealing with hypnotherapy more than anything else these days because CBT is great. You can talk about stuff and where those modalities like CBT and any other talk therapy work is where the person already knows what's going on and they're ready. Their level of readiness is way up there.
Hmm.
But to regression and harder topics, you can't beat it. You can't beat it because oftentimes it's the safest way for someone to look at something horrible that happened without being attached to those emotions, right? And I
Wow.
think that honestly, if everyone really did take the word holistic as what it actually means and be willing to work with each other and blend modalities together and be open and aware, there would be a lot more change a lot faster on the planet. But I also recognize that everything is happening the way that it's happening and unfolding the way that it's unfolding so that we can get to that point because apparently we were that way before those people that we're not going to talk about again intervened. And that in itself is very, people don't like when you say the B word when you talk about the Bible and stuff. But and I'm not a Christian person, but it does tell you in Ephesians that it's spirits doing this. It's evil spirits in other people that do this. And that also gets lost on people as well because it's such a big concept. But if I had to simplify that process, imagine there's a negative entity or a demon or whatever you prefer to call it. It's like a tick. And I guess for anybody that's not watching this, you'll miss out. But this is my hand is a tick, and it's got these legs, and they operate using electromagnetics. And so their legs are reaching out and waiting for you to pass by, and this is you passing by, and that's how they get on you because this is what magnetizes them to you. But because emotions are electrical and electromagnetic, that's how they bind to you. If you don't keep good spiritual and emotional hygiene, those things are going to get on you. And what do ticks do? They're looking for a host to feed on. And a lot of that gets lost in the conspirituality realm where people talk about loosh and all these different kinds of things because it externalizes all of the responsibility to this dark force as if you can't take your power back. And then it makes it seem like once that power is gone from you and it's been siphoned away, it's been loosh harvested, that you can't get that back, right? So we have to really be willing to go deep on those very simple levels of awareness every day to make sure that these parasites don't feed on us. And you mentioned politics and all these different things. Well, there's the that word, politics. Many ticks,
Wow. That's
right?
something else, isn't it? That's so interesting. So, Jehan, tell us how if someone is looking to work with you on a hypnotherapy session or to heal their own episodes of self-sabotage that they're experiencing, that they know they're already aware that this is affecting their life, how is it that they reach out and work with you in a on a one-to-one capacity?
You can visit my website, healselfsabotage.com, or you can email me at selfsabotageinfo@proton.me. And I'd love to talk with you. I absolutely love most of my clients, the ones that are really nice and want to be loved on. We'll be happy together. And I just think that if you have any questions anyway about anything, you should reach out to me because I'm not gonna, just not answer your emails or whatever. It might take me some time, but just reach out.
I've worked with a lot of coaches in the 10 years that I've been doing this, and I can say that um, the caliber of your personhood is a very different flavor than most coaches are out there offering. There is a level of presence, and there is it's a different level. That's all I can say. Like many coaches are out there kind of and this isn't to dog anyone, but they are performing their one trick ponies. And there is a level of how it is that you meet people where they are at, because I've been in many different places in the handful of times that I've met with you, and the way in which you are able to shine light on some things that I needed to bring to my awareness. The parallel, I haven't met it yet. And so I definitely encourage our viewers who have tuned in today to check out those links that will be provided in the comments and the description of this video. And Jehan, is there anything that you'd like to leave our audience with? Any final thoughts from your heart to theirs?
Well, have you ever just promised yourself that you would do something and then somehow you found yourself doing the exact opposite? Because I know that happens to me even now. And I think that everybody shares that experience. And that's just really what I help people to understand. Like you were saying, I have never judged you and never tried to make you feel small. And I've always been present with you. And that's really what I think it's really all about. Because if you allow a person to understand a big concept on their own, that's the best gift that you can give them. I'm not trying to change anybody from the way that they are. I'm not trying to tell anyone that they're wrong for what happened. Because really, we're just working on making sense of patterns that used to make perfect sense, but now they don't anymore for one reason or another. And everything is just okay. Like, that's what everybody needs to understand. Like, things are getting worse. There's a high level of anxiety, but everything is still just okay if you want to work on yourself so that it's okay. But if you're going to tell you, okay, then you got to reach out to Jen, or you got to reach out to me, or you got to reach out to somebody that's going to tell you that, yeah, this is how we make stuff okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on Raising the Consciousness of Humanity today, Jehan. It's always such a treat to meet with you and to discuss with you. There's always so much more that I feel like we could bring up, but it is always an illuminating conversation. And you are welcome to join us back anytime when time and the universe permits. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we don't get enough time to hang out together, but I always love our time together.
Yay. Thank you so much.
A human design analysis of today's conversation with Jehan Sattaur is waiting to be explored on Design Within You. If energy shaping the themes of what we discussed today intrigued you, you'll find that episode linked below.